Welcome everyone. Welcome to Level Up, our business seminar series, which is designed to provide cutting-edge information to our business community. It's a seminar series brought to you in part by the Harford County Department of Economic Development, the Harford County Chamber of Commerce, the Small Business Development Center, and the Randall Group. So congratulations, you have your business, and congratulations, you've grown to the point that you now need to hire your first employee. But all of a sudden, you realize that there are significant practical, legal, and financial issues, just to name some, that will now implicate you as a business owner before you make that first hire. So the purpose of today's seminar is to provide advice and guidance that will help you to properly make sure that you can make and start off on a good foot as you start make your first hire. So we're very pleased to have two very talented speakers and very experienced individuals here to help guide us on these important issues. So first, we have Carolyn Evans, who is an attorney with the Paula Law Group based in Bel Air. Carolyn works on estate planning, landlord-tenant, and most importantly, corporate work. Many years of experience, and we're really thrilled to have her. And second, we have Cheryl Davis-Cole, who is the founder and current owner of Beacon Staffing, located in Aberdeen. She helps One Stop for staffing services and helping businesses to recruit for all of their staffing needs. Both of these individuals, as I said, have tremendous experience and guidance helping business owners almost on a daily basis on the very issues that we're going to be talking here today. So we're very pleased to have both of them to help guide us. So with that, Carolyn and Cheryl, it's my pleasure to turn it over to you, and thank you again for your time and your expertise that you're about to share with us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ro. Okay, cool. Well, good evening, everyone. So just wanted to, if we all take a couple minutes, maybe just run around the room, tell us who everyone is. We want everybody to feel comfortable. If you have a question, stop us. We don't have to wait to the end of the presentation. So, Rochelle, nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. Again, Rochelle Jose, I'm the Deputy Director of Operations at Veritech in Aberdeen. While we are a small business of still under around 30 employees, I manage the HR department, so we would like to join things like this to make sure that our foundation is strong, and there's always a lot of new things to learn. So even though we do already have our first employees, we just want to make sure that we're doing things right by people.
Cool.
I'm Andrew Pratt, CEO for Stop Games LLC. Startup company. We're hoping to be in business about a month from now. We write software for other video game companies. Haven't hired any staff yet, but I'm talking to some people and looking into it. So it's going to be very helpful for me.
Cool. Very good.
I'm Sophia. I'm a cottage baker. I started baking 4 years ago from home, and I still work from home. People come and pick up my baked goods at my home. I'm getting very busy, so thinking of getting maybe a high school student or someone part-time to help me package, label, measure ingredients, maybe do some social media and things
Okay.
like that. And I
Awesome.
have no clue how to go about it, so I'm hoping that you'll help me.
Well, very good. Well, thank you. Okay, so we'll get started. Your first hire. So, and we got a little presentation here. There you go. So hiring your first employee. So you shouldn't be afraid of that. What I always tell people when you're thinking about your first employee, it's like try and think about what you need that person to do. Okay, what do they need to do? And I always try to tell people, because I work with customers that are thinking about they might need another person, but they're not sure. Do they need a full-time person? Do they need a part-time person? So I always say try and make a list of some of those job skills that you would need the person to work with.
Do you want me to hit the button?
Sure. You
Which
can hit
button
the
do I
button.
push?
Yeah, hit this button here.
Okay.
All right, and I'll stand over here. So, okay. So I always say, if you think about it, I kind of made a little chart. It's kind of neat if you think about today. You can find a lot, like past experience, but also there's a lot of information on the internet. So needless to say, you can put some information out there. But the whole idea is it's when you go to hire somebody, it's a decision about someone that you're going to bring into your confidence, a business that you're building, and now you're going to have them work with you, right? So a lot of responsibility on bringing that person on or finding the right person. And I always say sometimes we get busy and we quickly hire somebody because we're so super busy, we really think we need somebody, so we're just like, they're going to work out, and we bring them, right? But we didn't plan for what we were going to have them do. So I always say it's good to take your time, plan for what you're going to do, and it's going to take a little bit of a timeline, right? Our clients call us, and we would love to have had somebody who could work yesterday, right? But realistically, we're going to need to advertise them and try to find the best candidate for you based on the job skills. So as we go through this process, you'll find how important it is to work on figuring out what the skills are that you need the person, what do you need them to do, and help them along. And then all these slides are available, so this will all be saved and it'll be available online, so we can share that. So I said, do you need to hire? Want to define the work that you want the person to do. You don't want them to feel overwhelmed because you're overwhelmed, right? So we take our time. Can the work be done by software? Can we update something in our database to make this process simpler? Or can we outsource this project, right? Is it repeat is every day the same, or on Mondays we always have to do this and on Thursdays we always have to do this? So do I need 2 different people, or could that same person do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday and work it out that way? And then what are you good at? So are you good at getting new business or researching information? So if that's your strength, then what is the strengths that you want in that candidate or that new hire that you're going to bring on board? So really evaluate what you want them to, what their skill set's going to be. Yeah. And in a lot of companies, this is like their first hire. Are they hiring someone to help them with administrative help? I talked to a business the other day. He says he couldn't get his invoicing out. He's really good at what he does, and he meets with his customers and he does consulting, but then he's 2 or 3 months behind in sending out his invoices. So really he just needs someone to help him get his invoices out, right? Or get his books, or his bookkeeping done, or his billing out. Customer service, do you need someone who can answer the phone? They sound professional. Yeah, could your phone transfer to someone's house for them to work at home and take your orders for you, right? What's the customer service position you do? Do they need, if you have a business, do they need to be the first person they see when they walk in? I was at a company last week. 2 of the companies I visited have a computer there. And you have to punch in the computer who you're going to see. There is no interaction of anybody in the company. You could see the people on the other side of the glass, but not one person's walking out to talk to you. So you as a business, is that a good image for you to have? Especially if you had a new employee come in that didn't know what to do, is what I was thinking. Like that kind of was very cold, but that was their decision. So sometimes you have to just evaluate where you're at. Is it, I say operations support, like you mentioned earlier, help and measure, packaging things. That could be operations, right? It could be helping you get the final product out the door. So really taking a list of, I always say, sit there during the day and say, if I had an extra person, what could they do, right? And would that be valuable to me as the business owner? Is that going to have value for me? And then sales, it's like sometimes people, I mean, you'll get calls all the time once you say you're going to open. I can help you do your sales. I can send you a list of all these candidate or clients that are in your area. We can make the phone calls for you. There's always people trying to solicit you to give you additional help, but you just have to weigh that, whether that's good or bad. Like you mentioned, marketing. Sales support could be your marketing, could be your social media, Instagram, TikTok, being on X. I mean, there's all those platforms now that years ago, all we worried about was making sure our office was open and we had applications for people to fill out. Now people want to do everything online. So trying to make sure your product's at that point. Okay, next slide, please. And I put a neat little statement up here. People don't fail jobs. Unclear jobs fail people. So you really have to take your time when you're working on this job description of what you want the person to be able to do, right? And make sure when you're recruiting for that person that you're recruiting for the skills that you think are necessary for that person to have. And it could be as simple as, are they comfortable with using a computer or a laptop or a tablet? And here's another. So I said vague roles. Oh, I need a helper, or I need a right-hand person. And then what happens is then that person's trying to figure out what you wanted them to do. So by you clearly defining the roles of what you want the person to do, kind of the expectations, then you're going to have success with that new first hire.
And I would just add here, be as clear as you can be. I mean, I worked with someone one time, different personalities, and I sat there while I thought he was telling me what to do. And I left and I did it, and I came back and said, why'd you do this? It's like, well, that's what you told me to do. No, that's not what I told you to do. So make sure that you're clear with your expectations of the work product. What are you expecting them to do?
Right. Next slide, please. And then I put a little slide in here, employee versus contractor. So as an employee, you control the schedule, process, and the priorities. And it could be a long term. But as a contractor, like if you outsource the position, you have control. How, when the work is done, and it could be short-term based. Like you could hire somebody for 3 weeks and help you get caught up, right? Or 2 weeks and help you caught up. Or part-time you could hire somebody. So it's trying to figure out when you're thinking about hiring them, are you hiring them as a contractor or are you going to hire them as an employee? Now, and you don't want to, you want to make that decision when you're hiring that person. So most of the time it's going to be an employee. You're going to hire an employee unless you feel that you can outsource that project to a contractor or to someone else who can do that work. But the majority of the time it'll be an employee that you're going to be bringing on board.
And I do want to weigh in here because it is very common for employers to mischaracterize employees as independent contractors. It's easier for me. I don't have to pay taxes. I pay them cash. It's easy for me. Well, yeah, it is easy for you until it's not, because at some point they might become angry with you and file a wage claim, a Department of Labor claim, in which case the burden is on you. And there's more tests than just this one. There's like a list of 10 factors that they look at for the IRS, the state of Maryland, common law, to determine whether someone is an independent contractor or an employee. So be very careful just paying everybody as a 1099 independent contractor. They should have a contract. They should have their own place where they're working. They should have control over the time and methods of their work. They're providing their own supplies. I mean, they're truly an independent contractor, and they're working for other people. Okay, so that's very important. And in your business, as a software writer, very common in your industry to utilize contractors, and that's fine, but you just have to make sure that the relationship is clearly defined and followed, and don't refer to your independent contractors as my employees. You know, that's muddying the waters there, okay? So that's just important. You could do a whole talk on paying employees, but that's just something there.
Yep, so, okay, next slide, please. What hiring costs? So I said set realistic expectations, right? So your first hire won't save you time at first, but it buys you future time. So meaning you're gonna plan on the first hire and make sure that you got your expectations, you have your job description down, and you're gonna work on making sure you try to hire the right person. But sometimes that right person, it can work. Sometimes it might not work. Or that right person might turn the job down. Like you built them up and you thought this was going to be the right person for you, and they didn't take the job. They changed their mind. So that happens. Just start over again and work through the process. And then I put, this is a neat little slide I put up next, sorry. Yeah, I put up a neat little slide. This is like just an average. Like if you're gonna advertise for somebody, some of these job boards, that's a minimum. Some are free, but it could be a minimum of $100 up to $500 for a job posting. This is just, some ideas of what it truly costs possibly to hire somebody, right? And then a referral bonus. Sometimes in bigger companies, they'll offer a referral bonus, or if you find a good candidate, I'll pay you a referral bonus if you bring someone who we hire to our business. And then there's pre-employment screening. Some people decide they're going to do a drug screen or a criminal background check, right? Social security verification. I have one of my clients wants us to do education verification. They have to prove that they actually have a college degree. So different customers, different clients, and in your business, you'll decide what you want to be done with that. Relocation, if we were going to move somebody here from California to work in Maryland, and they're the best baker in California, they're Duff Goldman, right? You would pay a bonus or a referral bonus to help them move, like to help them with their moving expenses, that type of thing. That's what that means. Onboarding depends on what equipment you have, right? Do you need to get them their own laptop, right? Do they have to have their own VR headgear for your work you're doing? Do they have to have a special license? Like you already have a license package for Microsoft Office. Do you need to add another license? That's all some of the things that come up on that. And then the burden, what we talked about burden is if you think about what we pay. So right now in Maryland, the minimum wage, if you have, it's $15 an hour, right? Depending upon, you guys are small companies, you'll be under the 10-person threshold, right? So you might be able to pay a little less, right? If you can find that candidate. But the burden is the taxes, like federal, state, local taxes, unemployment, and then workers' comp on top of that. There's a bunch of stuff that goes on. So that's considered the burden. So if you think of just for instance, to be on the, say a $10 pay rate, your burden's 25%. Could be up to $2.50 or higher depending upon what your benefits that you might offer, right? So always look at that. Sometimes employers get so caught up in my pay rate is this, but no, when you then process the payroll out, you have all the taxes that are in that, FICA, Medicare, things
And
like
there's
that.
reporting requirements.
Yep.
And payment of your quarterly,
Right.
taxes.
Yeah. And then, yep. So, I put like a simple little hiring without the hassle. So I said, remember we talked about writing the expectation or the job task, right? We're going to share the job with people we know in our network. We might have people out there that are looking for an opportunity. So share that job with your network. And then we have so when you find a potential candidate, we're saying have a structured conversation. So you put a couple questions together and about what you're going to ask. So if you have a couple candidates, say you have 5 candidates, you want to ask those same structured questions to every candidate. So you stay on track and you're getting answers for those 5 questions, okay? And then when you hire somebody, you can hire them on a trial basis, right? A lot of times people say probationary could be up to 90 days, but you could hire somebody on a probationary basis. Just because you hire them doesn't mean they're going to be with you full for the rest as long as you want them. They could be probationary. They could be up to 90 days on a probationary. And I always say when you bring this person in, their expectations. What do you expect them to be able to do for you? We already talked about the job descriptions, but what do we expect them to accomplish? Answer all phone calls within 3 rings if they're helping on the phone. Something basic that they can comprehend. That every day, simple as all the lights need to be turned off. On Fridays, all our computers are turned off. You know, simple little expectations of things we do in the office. We want you to greet everybody that comes in, you know. What other simple tasks can people do that you're expecting them to do? Is it open all emails, right? You come in first thing in the morning, most of us say good morning, say hi to folks, and then we jump in our emails and try and look through emails and see who needs to be who needs a reply, right? And if you have a question, who do we ask that question to? Like, what did our supervisor want us to do? Okay. All right, so something else that I thought of when we're thinking about the people we're going to hire. So most important, we want reliability. We want that person who says they're going to want to come to work, that they're going to come to work. We want them to be able to learn, be able to adapt, learn your culture the way you want to get it done, and they want to have good communication skills. Sometimes we bring people on our teams that want to tell us how we should do the job. And I always say, walk in my shoes for 30, 60, or 90 days before we change that process, because we've got a process that it's been working for us. But sometimes you'll bring somebody new and they'll look at it, oh, let's do it this way. Let's take this shortcut. No, this has been working for us. Let's stay on this process. I said it doesn't matter about looking at somebody with a perfect resume that has got 3 jobs in the last 10 years, or they have 10 years plus experience. Sometimes we're hiring, we want an entry-level person, and we might look at that resume and see, did they graduate from college? Did they work during the summer? Did they
spell everything correctly?
Yeah, simple little things. I mean, do they have good sentences? Did they tell you? Like, sometimes we don't like it when it says 2024 to 2026. What does that mean on your resume, right? Should it be January of 24 to January of 26? At least we can narrow it down. But when people put giant gaps, that's something to look at. So, and we want you to have a feel for the person. You've met that person. You saw their resume or met them. They filled out a job application. You brought them in, you sat down and you talked to them. That's what we want. We want to learn a little bit about that person. They might have the best resume in the world, but guess what? They didn't make any eye contact with you while they sat having a conversation with you. And because no eye contact, and they're going to be greeting our customers, is that going to be a good look for us? So little things like that. So, you know, it's like we try to make sure we're going to hire the right person, but sometimes it's those things and how they presented themselves. While they were filling out the application in your office, were they on their phone the whole time, right? Right? Or was it ringing and they were answering it? So little things you can pick up just by observing how they behave in the interview. Okay. And then I said most common first hire mistakes, right? Hiring a friend without boundaries. Sometimes we say friends, neighbors, and relatives, right? They all think they're going to be the best employee for you. But you have to set the boundaries. Sometimes they think, well, we're friends. It's okay for me to come in 15 minutes late or 20 minutes late or 30 minutes late. But I didn't call to tell you I was running late. That's the kind of stuff. So you almost, as soon as that starts to happen, you have to say, look, our start time is 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock. I expect you here at 5 of 9, right? 10 of 9. Because that's what I'm expecting you to do. It's okay to hire friends, neighbors, and relatives, but remember, they're going to learn all about your business because they're going to be involved in the day-to-day operation of the business. And maybe there's some confidential of maybe your billing that you don't want them to be able to see, so make sure you separate that and don't let that be in the main database, make that password protected so they can't see that. So it's just, I'm not saying you can't hire those employees, just make sure you set your boundaries on how you're going to deal with that. And there you go, setting clear hours. What are the hours you want that person to work? How many days a week are they going to work? All right, do you want them working part-time? Do you want them working 40 hours, 35 hours? When you meet these people and talk to them, some might say, oh, I can work 8 hours a day, 4 days a week. And I like to have every Friday off. But you as the decision maker can make that decision and say, but I might need them on Saturdays. I don't need you on Friday, but I need you on Saturday. So our week's going to be Monday through Thursday and every other Saturday. You as the business owner have the ability to make that decision and recruit for that candidate that you're looking for.
I just want to weigh in here with regard to paying employees. You just can't decide you're going to pay an employee salary and they work as many hours as you want them to. It doesn't work that way. They get paid minimum wage for every hour up to 40 and time and a half after that, unless they are exempt. And the exemptions are under the Fair Labor Standards Act, and that's beyond our conversation today. What I want you to understand is you just can't say, I'll pay you $1,000 a week and you work them to death. You cannot do that, and that's important. And it's also important to know that Maryland is what we call an employment at will state. That means an employer can terminate an employee at any time, with or without notice, with or without reason. The employee likewise has the right to leave at any time without notice and without reason. What you can do as an employer, okay, I give you 2 weeks vacation at the beginning of each year. You're going to forfeit that vacation if you leave without giving me 2 weeks notice. You can make conditions like that on employment, but it's at will, and that's important to know. You say, I can't terminate this person. Yes, you can. Right. Now, there might be other things that you might have to pay them unemployment, such like that, but it's still an at will state.
Right. And I was going to say, when we're discussing issues that come up, like it could be smoking. They take too many smoke breaks, but we have to set the expectation. You're allowed one break every 3 hours or every 2.5 hours, and you have a 10-minute break. You set that expectation, so you can't be upset if they take 15 or 20 minutes, or they had a smoke break and then a phone call and then went to the bathroom. You set that expectation of, and you don't want it to build up and let it go on for a week or two, and then you're really mad because they're taking too many breaks. Well, you didn't set the expectation of what was acceptable on the breaks. And then the other one is the pet peeve a lot of people have we talked about it earlier, is lateness. So whatever time we want that person to start, we understand once a week, maybe in the first month, you might be late because you got stuck at a red light, or one of your kids was sick, or the dog ran out and you had to go chase them. Things happen, right? Call your employer. I always say, call the boss, tell them what happened, and I'm on my way, right? But we can't let that happen. If you're the new employee and this happens 3 times in the first 30 days, what is that? My expectations of you is not going to work. I'm disappointed. But I have to tell you, I need you to do your best to get to work on time, right? And we've had employers, that have decided, oh, they're such a good employee, we're going to let them come in a half an hour later. Well, coming in a half an hour later isn't fair to all the rest of the employees that came in on time that day, right? So in a way, they get special. So do your best. I always tell people, set the expectation of what time you expect them to be there, and do your best to be on time. So.
And that's the key. They have to be there, ready, willing, and able to work when their shift starts. Your shift starts at 9. You don't walk in the door at 9, put your coat on, go to the bathroom, put your makeup on, come out and sit down working. The expectation is at 9 o'clock you will be working. If you need to do those other things, give yourself time to do that, but your obligation, it starts at 9. That's when you're expected to be in your place working and being productive.
Yeah, and then I put a slide in here about recruiting for you guys if you're going to be looking for a person. So we've talked earlier about define the role, what we expect out of the person, and that would kind of come up with a little job description that we've worked on, right? The responsibility, skills needed, and what you think as a salary range, pay rate range. Is it 15 to 17? Is it 18 to 22? Whatever range you believe. And then I always say, sometimes companies will say, we'll hire based on their skills. So we'll determine that wage once we meet the candidate and know where they want to be, what they can afford to pay. I threw a couple ideas in here where we kind of publish some of the online jobs for advertising. Like everybody probably has a Facebook page. Your business might have a Facebook page. You can put new opportunity and advertise it there.
And I do see that. And I also see people saying, I need a job on Facebook, right? All the time.
Right.
Harford County Happenings is one where I
Right.
see them.
Right.
So don't be shy about, posting there. I'm
Post
not
in
sure
our-
what you're going to get, but I do see the postings
Right.
and the pleas for,
yeah,
for
and then
jobs.
we our company posts or sponsors a page called Employment Harford County. Back during many years ago, people were struggling trying to find work, and we started that Facebook page. I think we have over probably 40 or 50,000 followers right now. But employers will go and put their job opportunity up there, and then you'll see people reaching out and talking to them. So I said LinkedIn, that's the business one now. So if you're on LinkedIn, you could easily mention, hey, I have an opportunity, or I know of a friend who's hiring, that type of thing. Indeed's there's a bunch of job boards, Indeed, Monster, ZipRecruiter. So there's a lot of job boards. Some are free and some you have to pay for. So you just determine, like the state of Maryland has one that's called Maryland Workforce Exchange. You can advertise on that for free. And you can put your job up on that.
I'm sorry, can you say that again? Maryland, what is it?
It's called Maryland Workforce Exchange. Is a free site out there. And then I'm back to, conduct the interview. So we already advertised for the person, we've gotten some potential candidates, and now we're going to, this is my page. I don't want to get all pages messed up. So we're going to conduct the interview, okay? So we talked earlier about a list of questions that we want to ask the same questions to every person we're going to talk to. If their technology skills need to be evaluated, we can evaluate that. There's companies out there that can give you an evaluation on kind of, I say, testing their skills, whether that's in Microsoft or Excel or whatever you need them to have. Some companies want to have a background check done, so it's your decision on that. Whether you want a drug screen. Carolyn will get into a little bit. I said verify employment history. So if they say they've worked at a bakery in New Jersey, you have the ability to pick up the phone with their reference and call and verify. Usually they'll just give you their dates of employment. And then usually the question, and a lot of people ask, would you rehire this person? Like, meaning they've left your company, and the question, and usually they'll say yes or no. A lot of times, that's all they're gonna, dates of employment, and that's pretty much it. Sometimes they'll tell you what they made, salary, pay what, but majority of times they're just gonna verify dates of employment. But you have the ability to do that. And then some of this stuff, like Social Security verification, just depends. You know, if the person comes in with their actual Social Security card, and like sometimes employers have to do something called e-verify, where we'll verify in a database that that's a legitimate Social Security card and that person is here legally to work in the US. So because my company started doing that many years ago, every single potential employee we hire, we have to do e-verify.
And there are companies that will do drug screening and background checks for you, because there are rules associated with drug screening and background checks. So don't do that unless you know what you're doing. But it is important to do.
And that's like one of those things where you could outsource that out.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I think maybe Carolyn, this could be one more for me, prior to employment. So I was saying, okay, so now we've made our first hire, right? Today's the first day they're coming to work for us, or Monday's going to be, right? I always say, give yourself a couple days. Make sure their work area is ready for them, right? We don't want you cleaning off a shelf to be able to set them up, right? Make sure they have a space, that they have a chair, that they have a computer, a telephone, whatever you think they're going to need to work with that day, we want to get them ready. I said system access, because sometimes all of us, if you're getting emails at work, you might need to set up an email address for them, right? You might need to give them passwords to get into your database. So you might have to contact your IT company to help them, get that person all set up. And then Carolyn will go a little bit more detail on the paperwork, but there's a lot of paperwork that needs to be done for this for their first day. I said, do they need a security badge? Or do they have to go someplace where they would need a badge? Little things like that. And then we'll go over the first day of the schedule. You have a brand new person coming in. Last thing we want them to do is, you're so busy, phones are ringing off the hook, you've got that new employee, and guess what? You're like, hey, can you sit over here and watch this video, right? Because I'm too busy to sit and work with you. So if I typed up a little schedule or hand wrote a schedule down, this is what you're going to do on day one. This is how we're going to help. This is the task that we're going to work on today. Thank you so much for coming. Be real excited that they came. Here's where we always give them, like, where's the break room? Where can I get a cup of coffee or a water fountain, or the bathrooms? What's all expected? But in your schedule, it's like, oh, at 11:30 we go to lunch today, right? And our lunch is 30 minutes or it's an hour. We will come back. I'll meet with you in the afternoon. We'll discuss what you've been working on. And at the end, and our closing time is. So kind of they should have already known that, but you're going to re-emphasize that when they come with you that day. Cool. Very good. And then I kind of put welcome email sent with logistics. So like the day before, you could easily send that email out, or you could text it to them, because everybody gets text messages now. Not everybody opens their email, but everybody reads text. So you could always send it out as a text. All right, so now Carolyn and I will trade places.
Alrighty. See what we have here. All right, so I don't know under what corporate umbrella. Obviously, you're a corporation, LLC. You're probably a sole proprietorship. Oh, you're an LLC. How about yourself? LLC. Good job, people. LLC's much easier framework within which to operate. You don't have to have a board of directors and stockholders. You don't have to document all of your important decisions with minutes, which nobody does. So it's a much easier framework within which to operate. You're taxed at your individual level. But you do have, that layer of protection from liability. So I'm sure you have an employee federal tax ID number for your businesses. If you're selling goods, you need to have a trader's license. If you have employees, you have to file with the Department of Labor and get a Department of Labor number. That's how you're going to pay your payroll taxes. And if you're selling goods, you have to pay sales taxes, and you need a sales tax number for that. You're going to need to have your workers' comp insurance. You kind of need 3 team members with your business: an accountant, a lawyer, and a good insurance agent. Those are the three tiers of your success in business. All right, so the payroll systems. My husband and I actually had a small business. We had Beller Bagel and Deli. We had about 25 employees. The first decision I made was, I am not doing payroll for 25 people. We need a payroll company. Best decision we ever made. Because we had all the employees, they did their hours. In those days it was time cards. Today it's all punched in. Tons of people sell the product. If you have more than 1 employee, 2 employees, or 3, it's the best money you'll ever spend. That frees you up to do your work, because those people need to be paid every week. Those reports need to be filed when they need to be filed. There's no forgiveness on that, okay? And then, of course, your federal taxes, your state taxes, your local taxes, your Medicare taxes, all those taxes come out of the payroll, and your payroll company will do that. If not, there's QuickBooks. I mean, there are off-the-shelf software programs that you can buy that I'm sure you plug in the numbers and it will all do it for you, probably electronically file it as well. Okay, so there is something in Maryland called the Wage Transparency Act. And so before they start working, you should really provide them with a written notice which outlines their rate of pay, the days they will be paid, what their benefits are, and this can be done in an offer letter. Welcome to such and such a company, your position will be this, you will make this, you have this vacation, those things that you want to establish at the start, so there's no confusion about that. Their pay stubs have to reflect their gross earnings and deductions, including sick and safe leave balances, and the pay stub must include the amount and description of each deduction. Not like the old days where you just wrote them a check and said, here's your pay. There are specifics that have to be included in that pay stub. So the first form that you need to fill out for your employee is the famous I-9. And there is an I-9 in the packet that I gave you. I gave you the I-9 and all of the instructions. You can also, Google is your friend, AI is your friend, but it's not where you end, it's where you start, okay? That's the beginning of your search. You pull down the I-9, and you go to the IRS. You're not going to pull down what Carolyn Evans tells you need to do with an I-9. You go to the IRS, you pull down the IRS form, and you fill it out. It has to be completed no later than the first day of an employment, but not before they accept a job. They have to present their documents within 3 days, unless they're hired to work for less than 3 days, then the first day of employment. They have to have the instructions with them when they are filling out the form. And the employee gets to choose which of the acceptable documents that they are going to provide. You can't say, I only accept a Social Security number and nothing else. You have to let them choose from the list. List A, if you have a List A document, that alone is sufficient. If you choose them from List B, then you have to have B and C documents. There's sort of a matrix that you have. Certain documents are acceptable for a temporary period. If the documents are going to expire, say it's May, and the documents are going to expire in July, you cannot reject those documents. Okay, you can have them come back with, when they expire, you have to re-verify, but you have to accept that document. And then the employer has to complete their section within 2 days. You have to retain the completed forms and documents. You cannot dispose of a current employee's form and copies of documents. You have to keep forms for 3 years after the date of hire or 1 year after termination, whichever is later. You can save the forms on paper, microfiche, electronically. You only need to retain the pages that you and the employee wrote information on, so you don't have to keep the instructions. You must physically inspect the documents. Not enough for them to give you a photocopy of their Social Security card or their right to work card, whatever it is. You have to see the actual card. You can make a copy of it, and you have to make a copy of it, and you have to return the original. You have to re-verify if their work authorization expires. If they must present unexpired documents from List A or C. If you rehire former employees within 3 years of the original I-9, you must re-verify, and then you can go to everify.gov when available. Okay, so that's the employer's first responsibility. You have to keep those forms. The next form, which you also have in your packet, and I included the I-9 with all the instructions. I've also included the W-4 employees withholding certificate. This is the federal form. The employee completes this. You give it to them. Complete it. When it's complete, give it back. But there are instructions there for them. The biggest one for them is to make sure that their name matches their Social Security card. When I was Carolyn Wilson for a long time. When I got married, I became Carolyn Evans. I changed my Social Security card to match my name. It's important. If I never change my card, I'm going to have a problem when I retire because they're not going to know that Carolyn Wilson is really Carolyn Evans, okay? So it's important to do that. If they don't know how much to withdraw, there's estimators at IRS that they can use to determine the actual ones. And there's a bunch of different places where they fill out if they have multiple jobs, if they have dependents, and so on and so forth. So there's the W-4 for employees for federal. For Maryland, there's a form MW-507, very similar. It has to be filled out, and then you use that, to put whatever exemptions that they want. There's also a Maryland new hire form. You have to submit this one to the state of Maryland within 20 days of hiring. You can submit it online, or you can mail it. There's even a fax number. And that form is in your file. And I included what I could find online in AI as far as completing the forms and little tips for that as well. Is there anything else I have on there?
Nope, I thought that was. Oh, labor law.
There is also a labor law poster. It's probably right at the end. Well, it's in there. It's supposed to be in there. It's this one, know your rights. Okay, that should be posted. And you want to post it where they can see it. It's not enough to post it in the hall, in the storeroom where no one goes. It should be in a break room. It should be where people can read their rights. Another issue, an employee handbook. I have mixed feelings about employee handbooks. If you have 1 or 2 employees, don't come to me for an employee handbook. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of money. And you don't want to come to me for an employee handbook because it will cost you a fortune. My hourly rate is $3.25, and I bill in 2/10 of an hour, and it's going to cost you a lot of money. There are companies that will do employee handbooks for you. And believe me, I don't like doing employee handbooks either. They're very tedious. They're very technical. So but if you start getting into the 8, 10, would you agree with me, about 8 or 10, you have a lot of employees that you're managing. You want to make sure that you're treating everyone consistently and that you have rules that you're applying consistently. And when you start having a bunch of policies on your bulletin boards, that's when you want to, okay, we need to do something and formalize this process. Okay, I think it's back to you.
Yeah, back to me. Okay. So back to, so we just wanted to finish up. So I kind of made a little chart, and like I said, we'll share all this with you, but this is what to expect, our employee would expect on the first day they start. I know it's a lot of information on here, and a lot of it's basic, but is the owner available to say hi, good morning, thanks for coming to work with us today, makes a big impact on your person. I put in a little office tour, introduce any staff. This is going to be your first new hire, but maybe you're working with family too. Maybe you just need to introduce them to the rest. Carolyn talked about the paperwork. We got to make sure we got the employment paperwork done. And we reminded that new employee that the day they came to start with us, they needed to bring their forms with them, their documents. They needed to bring the social security card or their birth certificate or their driver. They needed to bring that or their ID card. If we have any policies and procedures, we need to talk to them about it. Do we explain to them about our product, what we have, what we're doing here? We're going to set our expectations. If we have benefits, we can go review the benefits, but as a new company, you might not have benefits. You might just say, hey, after we give 1 week vacation or 2 weeks vacation or paid time off, explain how that all works. We talked about payroll, how you're going to keep track of it. Are you going to have them write their hours down? Or are you going to have a time card and they'll write their hours on that time card? But that's something you should look, or are you going to have them do it on the app on their phone, on the payroll? And then you could put some goals together with the person, whether that's a 30, a 60, and a 90-day goal with those new employees. And then I always like to explain the workflow. If we started here with our raw product, how many steps does it go to get out to where it's out the door or it's finished? Show everybody the steps of that process. And then if you need to, assign a mentor. If you're not available, can I go ask a question? Who am I going to ask my question to, right? Because if you got called out, is there somebody else here I can ask a question? Or how do I ask a question? Do you want me to text it to you? Do you want me to email you? That type of thing. That's the start for the first day. And then I put a little bit, and all these charts, we're going to let you, like I said, all these would be available and we can share the presentation. But I kind of put some little things, like if you look over here, their first day / week. So we already talked about the tour. We got them set up at their workstations. They have all the necessary forms. Maybe we're going to have lunch with them today. Did we plan that? Hey, I'm so excited you came. We order lunch today from Jersey Mike's at 11 so that we eat at 11:30. What would you like? Because we're gonna eat lunch together today. Because I'm sure you have questions. People are afraid to ask questions, but if you kind of have a cup of coffee or a soda or an iced tea and a sub, they're gonna say, hey, by the way, I didn't quite understand how to do that. Can you explain that to me? It's much easier, much calmer.
Sometimes you can say, a lot of times people ask this, even if they don't. If you think there might be missing something, a lot of times people ask this question. That opens the door for other questions.
Yeah. And I talked about some, like your initial tasks, what do you expect them? And then I always say you do a weekly check-in meeting. Okay, you brought them day 1, you're excited they're there. Day 2, they came back. We're really excited, right? Day 3, day 4, day 5. Hey, you've worked a whole week with me. Is there something that, do you have any questions? Or do you not understand? What did you think? Do you like working here? Get their feedback, because you're learning, because this is your new first hire. So you want to make sure they feel comfortable and you're feeling comfortable with them. And then after a week, is it check in once a week, check in twice a week with that person? I mean, if they're your first, you're going to see them every day, but maybe you're going to be out of town for 3 days and you just want to have a good connection with them. And then over here, I just said, and then, when they're getting ready to leave after day 1, you just say, hey, remember, we start tomorrow at 8 o'clock or at 8:30. Just remind them, because they're so excited about their first day, they might have forgot what time do I. And maybe the first day you had them come in a little later so that you could put out all your fires before they came. So maybe normally start time is 8, but day 1 you had them come in at 9 so that you could take care of your phone calls or whatever needed to be finished up. So the next day you just say, hey, reminder, tomorrow we're back to the original time. We're coming in at 8, 8:30, 9 o'clock, whatever that time be. Just remind them. And then you'll share your next steps. What's the next thing for me to learn as my new hire? I taught them how to do this process today. Is tomorrow this process? And then, by Friday, will they have been trained up on everything? And really show your emotions. Tell them you're really thankful they came. We have a whole new generation of folks out there that kind of need a little extra nurturing, I think, sometimes. Some of these, they want to know how they're doing. They want to feel that they're being part of the team, that they're contributing. So don't be afraid to talk to them about that and like what's their strengths. I think I might have one more fun slide I put up. So I put up a fun slide because this is the person we interviewed, right? And this is how they showed up on day 1, just to be fun. Sometimes people, we're doing our best. We've hired somebody. We want them to come in. We want them to work out really well for us. And we're going to do everything we can as owners to make sure they feel comfortable and it's a good fit for us. With that, that's kind of like our last slide. Do you guys have any questions you'd like to ask us?
On one of the slides, it said something like, I wrote it down actually. It was something along the lines of like the first hire isn't going to save you time at first, but it'll save you time later. What exactly did you mean by
Well,
that?
meaning the first person you bring on board, you're going to put a lot of effort into making sure that that's the right, that you're taking your time and you're documenting all your processes. So once you've documented all your process, that next person you're going to bring on, right, you've already got your process documented. And it should be easier to bring on a second and a third and grow your company.
Okay.
Okay, yep, you're welcome.
The interview process mentioned that you should understand what questions you can and you can't ask. Can you elaborate?
So your question is, what questions can and cannot ask? Well, some of the obvious ones. Remember, there are different rules depending upon how many employees that you have. So, like 15 employees is where you get into EEOC, okay? Where the titles, Title 7 discrimination laws come into play. But that doesn't give you fair game if you have less than 15 employees to discriminate against people, because Title 7 also has protections that you don't have because you're not covered. So you don't want to ask discriminatory questions. Are you going to have a baby anytime soon? You're young, you look like, and you just got married. I'm thinking maybe you're going to have some children. You don't want to ask questions like that. I see you have trouble walking. Are you going to be okay getting into my house, getting into the job? You don't want to ask about physical disabilities. You don't want to ask questions to elicit someone's age. What year did you graduate from high school? Okay, because that's going to give you their age if they tell you that. I graduated in such and such a year, you're going to do your math. How many children do you have? Are you going to ask a man how many children he has? If you're not going to ask a man the same questions you're going to ask a woman, don't ask the questions, okay? That's discrimination. If I'm interviewing you and I ask you how many children you have, then it's fair game to ask you how many children you have. But truly, is it going to impact your hiring decision? So you want to make sure the questions you ask are going to impact your hiring decisions, or why ask them. The question should be limited to, can you do the job? Here are the functions of the job. Are you able to do these functions? These are the hours of the job. Can you come during these hours? Will you have anything that, that you can bring to the job that you think might help us? Keep it job related. Don't ask, do you have daycare for your children? Those are the danger areas, because then you have to, so if you, let's say you asked a young woman if she has daycare for her children, she doesn't get the job, but you hired him. Now she's going, oh, I know why she hired him, because he doesn't have to worry about his children. I'm going to sue her for discrimination. Well, now you have to prove that you asked him also if he had daycare. He's got children, did you ask him? That's a factual analysis. Maybe he might not remember, so now it's your word against his, you see? So it's best just not to go into those territories. So the questions that you ask should be job focused. You don't need to get into their personal, their private lives, their physical appearance. Where do you live? The question is, can you come to work on time? You really don't care where they live, as long as they can come to work on time. Does that kind of get to the heart of your question?
Yes.
Thank you.
I guess that ties in with have a list of questions and just stick to that.
Exactly right. So what she said is best. That is why it's good to have a list of questions and ask the same questions of everyone. Because then when the interviewing is done, you're comparing answers. You may even forget what the person looked like. And that's a good thing, because at this point you are just comparing their responses to the questions, which are job related. And that's what you're looking for, is who's going to perform the job best.
Is it okay to record an interview?
So the question is it okay to record the interview? In the state of Maryland, you cannot record anybody unless you have their consent. So if you say, I'm going to record you, you say, I've got my phone here, I'm going to record you, is that okay? If the person says yes, then that's fine. If they say no, you have to turn it off. And you can't do it you can't do it on the sly either. It's against the law in Maryland to do that. You can videotape them, but you can't take their voice.
Videotaping is okay.
Videotaping, the question is videotaping okay? Videotaping is okay as long as you get their consent to the audio.
Yeah.
You cannot record anyone's voice without their consent. Like if you call a company, you'll say, this call is being recorded. That is why. And if you stay on the line, guess what? You've consented. They don't ask, do you consent? It's like if we're being recorded and you stay on, you've consented.
Cool. Good.
So you talked about expectations. Do you recommend, and is it legal to type up a expectation sheet that the employer signs and the employee signs so that everyone is on the same page, and basically make sure that if there are any issues, the employer can go back and say, look, this is what we agreed on, and have documentation?
It is legal. There's nothing wrong with that.
Oh, sorry, repeat the question.
The question is, can you have a list of expectations that the employee and the employer sign? Is it legal? Can you do that? Yes, it's legal. There's nothing that prohibits you from doing that. You would obviously want to make sure that you have the same list of expectations for everyone in the same job. You're not changing them based on the person that you're talking to, unless there are specific expectations that you have of that person that you don't have of the other person. But I think that's perfectly acceptable. And it's interesting to know, because if you do terminate someone and they file for unemployment, okay, they're going to get unemployment if they tried to perform the job, but they just couldn't, okay? They're not fired for cause or misconduct or anything like that. They're going to get unemployment. And you as an employer are going to say, wait a minute, I fired them because they couldn't perform. Not only could they not perform the job, but they were rude. They didn't follow the rules. They were late every day. You let your list go on and on. Well, you better have that documented, like Cheryl said. You know, you were here late 3 times last week. Expectations were that you would come to work every day on time. You know, you have failed to meet that expectation and build the file. So when you do ultimately have to terminate that employee, they'll file for unemployment and they'll say, I performed, I don't know why they terminated me. So I terminated you because you never came to work on time. You were given tasks and you didn't do them. You were insubordinate. You know, all the things that would keep them from getting unemployment. So that's your risk, is that they'll file for unemployment and then your rates go up.
Speaking of unemployment,
Yeah.
if you have a probationary period with your first employee and you end up not hiring them after that probationary period, are they eligible for unemployment?
So the question is, if you hire someone for a probationary period and you terminate them during that time, are they eligible for unemployment? Unemployment is a very complicated beast. The question is yes, but maybe not against you. It might go against their former employer because they didn't work long enough for you.
Yeah, because in unemployment, you go back so many quarters. You're going back 4 quarters. So in theory, they're with you this quarter, but we're going to go back 3 previous quarters and see if they had wages during that. The other thing is, you talked about expectation. Sometimes job description, and sometimes people I've seen where they'll sign, okay, here's the job description. You're going to sign it, and the employer's going to sign it, and we date it. Right, and then maybe in 6 months we go back and review that job description to see if we've added any new job tasks on there. Have you gotten more experience and you've added some additional tasks, or have you grown into another position? I've seen that happen with some employers too. So.
And I do want to say about probationary period, people use that term, but it really doesn't mean anything. It doesn't grant you any special status under law. You're still an at-will employee. You can be terminated at any time for any reason, as long as it's not discriminatory from day one. You're not granted any special status by that. It is, but you know, it can be for an employer. Like, you're not going to qualify for any employer benefits until you successfully complete that probationary period. That's when that becomes an important time period. Yes, ma'am.
Is there a minimum age for an employee, and do the conditions apply to everyone that are listed?
The question is there a minimum age for employees, and are there special conditions? Yes, there is a minimum age for employees. I believe if you are working under the age, you might know this better than me. If you're working under the age of 14, you need a work permit.
14, 15, I think.
15,
right?
you need a work permit. There are certain jobs you cannot perform as a minor. You can't be around heavy machinery. You know, you have a bakery. You know, if they're working around an industrial sort of vat, that may be something that they can't do because that might be considered heavy machinery.
Right.
So there are restrictions upon what a minor can do. Unless they're a family member, then those restrictions by and large don't apply. But yes, there are restrictions to what a minor can do, and you have to have a work permit if they're 15 or under, and if you don't, bad things can happen to you in the state of Maryland. Because what will happen, I've seen it happen, you fire the child, and mom and dad get mad. And then they go to the state of Maryland and they file a claim against your company for hiring minors without the proper work permit. Everything is fine until it's not. And you got to prepare for the when it's not.
So along those lines, when you're hiring your first employee, you don't know what you don't know. So when you were talking about benefits earlier, and you know, whether that be vacation time or breaks, again, do you recommend documenting everything so that everyone's on the same page?
So the question is, when you're hiring employees, is it important to document everything so they're on the same page with regard to break times and benefits and such like that? I think it is important to do so. Every employee is different. You know, I've worked for an employer longer than some others. I might have more time than someone else. You can just have a policy. For instance, if you've worked, after a year you get 1 week's vacation. That applies to everybody, okay? You could say, at this level, you get a week, but if you're at this level, an officer level, whatever, you get more. I mean, you can change it based on status of the job, not the person, you know.
I was going to say, one other thing you could maybe list, is all your holidays. What holidays do you celebrate, right? If your employee's been with you 90 days, are they going to get paid for Memorial Day that's coming up? Will they be paid for Labor Day, July 4th? That's kind of the important things. But if you're a small company, you could say, we're only going to pay, some companies say you have to work the day before, the day after the holiday. It's in the policy, right? So if you take off the day after the holiday, you're not getting paid for the holiday because you didn't work the day after, right? So that's the kind of stuff that expectations, or we put it in our policy of this is what our policy is going to be. And you could be small enough that you'll say, I'm really sorry, we're not going to celebrate. I'm too small of a business. I can't afford that. But they know up front they're not going to get paid for that holiday.
You know, my business, you got to work Christmas. You got to work Easter. There's no requirement that you give them off Christmas and Easter. That's an employer's preference. And I also want to say, you need to be aware at least of the minimum requirements of the Fair Labor Standards Act. You got to pay employees. We're not talking, at this point, maybe you, but we're not talking about executive level. We're talking about hourly employees. You have to pay them at least the minimum wage for every hour that they work, hour and a half, time and a half for all hours over 40 within a week. They have to have break times, like in the morning, like a small break time in the morning, a small break time in the afternoon, and time for lunch. I mean, those are the minimum requirements under the Fair Labor Standards Act that sometimes you get away with until they're unhappy and they leave, and then they file a claim with the Department of Labor, and then they're coming in and looking at your records, and the burden is on you, the employer, to prove the employee is wrong. So that's a quick AI search. What do I, as an employer, have to provide a minimum wage employee? And it'll come right up, and that's probably accurate. But that's a whole, paying employees is a whole nother 2-hour program.
Good.
Is there such thing as a W-2 employee who isn't paid by the hour?
So your question is there a W-2 employee who's not paid by the hour? Absolutely. All employees are W-2 employees. Every single one of them. I am, you are, she is, you are. Yeah. Every employee has to fill out a W-2 and a W-4. The question is, can you pay them salary or do you pay them hourly? And to pay salary, they have to meet certain tests under the Fair Labor Standards Act to qualify. And one of them is, I forget, they keep changing the wage. They have to make at least a minimum. What is it?
Did they move it to 100,000?
I don't know. It's not that much, but they have to make at least a certain amount of each.
It's 52,000.
52, so 52,000 a year. They have to have, even with that though, they have to meet the executive test or professional tests and such like that. You just can't say, I'm going to pay you $52,000 a year, and we're good. And they're not a supervisor. They're not managing anybody. They don't have special skills. They don't qualify.
Right.
Okay? Because if they do qualify, you don't have to pay them time and a half. That's the big deal. Nobody wants to pay overtime. Okay? So they're always trying to fit them into that 1099 box or that salary box, right? And they don't always belong there. And that's where the employers get in trouble. Mm-hmm. And they can go back 2 years for a Fair Labor Standards Act claim, 3 years if it's willful. And willful means you knew it and you just ignored the law. And you get attorney's fees. And attorneys love those cases.
Very good.
Any last questions?
That's all for me.
Cool. Appreciate it.
So if we can have a round of applause for Cheryl and Carolyn.
Thank you. Thank you. And Angela.
Thank you, ladies. Hiring your first employee is both very exciting and terrifying at the same time. So best advice is to work with a professional, as they said, being able to ask an expert and make sure that you are checking the boxes for legal and compliance and best practices the way to go. And today you got two of the best in the field with Cheryl and Carolyn, so thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a great night.
Yeah.